Hello, Herstory fans, and welcome to episode 26. And today we are going to be talking about Hedy Lamarr, bombshell, absolute beauty, but brains as well. Hollywood actress, inventor, and the mother of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. This is the kind of what's the word? Epitome of this girl can. Yeah, Hedy had everything. So, born Hedwig Ava Maria Keisler on November the 9th, 1914 in Vienna, Austria. She was the only child of Gertrude, known as Trude Keisler, and Emil Keisler. Her father was a Jewish Ukrainian and was a successful bank manager. And Mum Trude was a pianist and came from an upper-class Hungarian Jewish family. Trude converted to Catholicism as an adult and raised Hedy Catholic as well, although she never had her formally baptised. As a child, Hedy showed an interest in acting and was fascinated by film and theatre, and at the age of 12 she won a beauty contest in Vienna. At the age of 16, Hedy forged a permission slip from her mum and went to Sasha Film, where she was hired as a script girl. She told her mum she had some extra acting classes in Vienna that she needed to go to. She then gained a role as an extra in Money on the Street in 1930. My hair's doing crazy things today. And a small speaking part in A Storm in a Water Glass the following year. Producer Max Reinhardt cast her in the play The Weaker Sex, which was performed at the theatre in der Josefstadt, and he was so impressed with her, he arranged for her to return to Berlin with him, where he was based. In Berlin, Hedy met Russian theatre producer Alexis Granowski and was cast in his directorial debut film The Trunks of Mr. O.F. in 1931. In 1932, she was given the lead role in No Money Needed by Carl Bose. Her next film, Ecstasy, this was the one that would bring her international fame. In 1933, aged 18, Hedy took the lead role in Gustav Macatier's film, playing the neglected young wife of an indifferent older man. The film became notorious because it showed the actress's face in the throes of orgasm. According to Marie Benedict's book, The Only Woman in the Room, her expression came from someone sticking pins in her. Nice. She was also shown in close-ups and brief nude scenes. The latter were reportedly a result of Hedy being tricked by the director and the producer, and they used like a high-powered telephoto lens, which is one that captures you from far away. So of course Hedy became disillusioned and jaded about taking other roles after this, because the film was banned in Germany. It received negative publicity in the US, but throughout Europe, though, it was kind of regarded as a very artistic film, and it won an award in Rome. At the time the film aired, Hedy was playing a starring role in the stage production of Sissy, a play about Empress Elizabeth of Austria. Admirers sent roses to her dressing room, and security had to be upped to stop people constantly trying to get backstage to see her. One man, Friedrich Mandel, became obsessed with her, and over time Hedy began to fall for his charming and charismatic personality, and of course his wealth. So he was a Viennese arms manufacturer, and he was the third richest man in Austria. Her parents hated him because he had ties to Mussolini and later Hitler and the Nazi Party, but they couldn't stop headstrong Hedwig from dating a fascist. They were married on August 10th, 1933, when Hedy was still just 18. Mandel was 33. Mandel insisted that Hedy formally converted to Catholicism before their wedding in Vienna. And in her biography, Ecstasy and Me, Hedy described Mandel as a controlling nightmare who prevented her from pursuing an acting career. She said she was kept a virtual prisoner in their castle home, Castle Schwarzenau, which was in remote Waldviertel. I'm going to upset people again with my pronunciation. I'm very sorry. Which was near the Czech border, so they lived in a castle that was very remote. He didn't trust her at home, so he dragged her along on business trips where he conferred with scientists and other military technology developers. What is wrong with me today? Military technology developers, and it was here that she was introduced to applied science, which was an interest that she would later pursue and nurture. Eventually, she found life with Mandel completely unbearable, and she fled to Paris disguised as a maid. She'd persuaded Mandel to let her wear all of her jewellery for a party, and then she did a bunk immediately afterwards. After arriving in London in 1937, Hedy met Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM, or Metro Goldwyn Mayer, who was talent scouting in London. She turned down his initial offer of $125 a week, but booked herself onto the same New York steamer as he was on, going back to New York. God, my head's kerfuffle today. I haven't even got anything to blame. I haven't got a cold or anything. Just one of those days. So yeah, she booked herself onto the same New York-bound ship that he was on, and during the trip, she impressed him so much he quadrupled his offer to $500 a week, which she accepted on the condition that she change her name from Hedwig Keisler, the ecstasy lady. And she chose the surname Lamarr on the suggestion of Mayer's wife, Margaret. So at this time, the German annexation of Austria into Nazi Germany, which happened in 1938, called the Anschluss, was going on, and obviously that is not a good place to be if you are Jewish. So Austria is not a good place to live if you are Jewish at that point in time during the Anschluss. So Hedy actually helped get her mum out of Austria and move her to the US, where they later became US citizens. On Hedy's mum's petition for naturalization, she stated herself as Hebrew. It's just a little fact to weave in there. So Mayer brings Hedy to Hollywood in 1938 while she's trying to get her mum out of Austria, and promoted her as the world's most beautiful woman, and I can't disagree with that. He introduced her to producer Walter Wanger. What a name. Walter Wanger, who cast her as the lead in Algiers opposite Charles Boyer, and the film created a national sensation with Hedy billed as this unknown Austrian actress who was a rising star. According to one viewer, when her face first appeared on screen, everyone gasped. Her beauty literally took one's breath away, and she was a very beautiful lady. In future Hollywood films, Hedy was invariably typecast as the glamorous seductress of exotic origin due to her accent. Her second US film was I Take This Woman in 1940, co-starring with Spencer Tracy. Then Lady of the Tropics, opposite Robert Taylor. Boomtown came in 1940 with Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy, making a cool $5 million. And MGM quickly reteamed Lamarr and Gable back together in Comrade X in 1940. In 1941, she played a Viennese refugee with James Stewart in Come Live With Me, and she was also in Ziegfeld Girl, the same year with Judy Garland and Lana Turner, where they played aspiring showgirls. In 1941, Also came H.M. Pullum Esquire, and in 1942 Tortilla Flat, Crossroads and White Cargo. But Hedy was becoming bored with the lack of acting challenges, the few lines she was having, and the kind of the emphasis on her beauty. So she then took up inventing to relieve her boredom. In 1944, she starred in Heavenly Body, The Conspirators for Warner Brothers, and Experiment Perilous. Her Highness and the Bellboy came in 1945, where she was playing a princess who falls in love with a New Yorker. This would be her last MGM film. Her off-screen life and personality was very, very different from her on-screen image. Smashing my notebook down, sorry for the noise. So she was actually really shy, retiring. She was really often lonely and homesick. She shunned crowds. When people asked her for her autograph, she just couldn't understand why they would even want it. She was described by others as being warm, sophisticated, magnetic, and resourceful. It's just some of the words I found people who knew had written about her. Hedy wanted to join the National Inventors Council, but was told by member Charles F. Kettering that she could better help the war effort by using her celebrity status to sell war bonds, and this was an investment scheme to, in short term, to finance the Second World War on America's behalf. But it was an investment scheme for people to buy into, which would pay out after 10 years and pay back the bondholder more money. So Hedy went on a war bond selling campaign with a sailor called Eddie Rhodes, where they enjoyed a brief flirtation. Hedy would call him up on stage, supposedly just this random guy. She would call him up on stage and she would say to the audience, shall I give this guy a kiss? And they'd all go, yeah, give him a kiss. And she'd go, well, only if enough people buy war bonds. So they would, and then she'd give the guy a kiss, and then he'd go back into the audience, and then they'd get back in their truck and they'd go on to the next city. So there's a little kind of performance that they had going. After leaving MGM in 1945, Hedy formed a production company with Jack Shertock, and they debuted the thriller The Strange Woman in 1946, followed by Dishonoured Lady in 1947 and Let's Live a Little in 1948. The films were usually completely over budget and really not a commercial success at all. A great producer, Hedy was not, unfortunately. She enjoyed her greatest success in acting, playing Delilah opposite Victor Mature in Samson and Delilah, which was the highest grossing film of 1950. The film won 2 Academy Awards. She returned very briefly to MGM for A Lady Without a Passport in 1950, which completely flopped. So she went to Paramount, where she made Copper Canyon in 1950 and My Favourite Spy in 1951. After this, her career began to slowly decline. She went to Italy for Loves of Three Queens in 1954, which she also produced, but the film lost millions of dollars. She was Joan of Arc in the critically panned The Story of Mankind in 1957, and her last film was The Female Animal in 1958. Hedy was signed to be in the 1966 film Picture Mummy Dead, but was let go after she collapsed during filming from nervous exhaustion, and she was replaced in her role by Zsa Zsa Gabor. It's also rumoured that she was wanted for Casablanca, but that role went to Ingrid Bergman. So one of Hedy's inventor friends was the aviator, Howard Hughes. They very briefly dated, and he put his team of scientists and engineers completely at her disposal. She studied the fastest flying birds and fish she could find and concluded that Hughes's planes were too square and boxy and that they should have a more streamlined shape in order to make them go faster. During World War II, Hedy learned that radio-controlled torpedoes could be easily jammed and set off course, so she thought of the idea of creating a frequency hopping signal that couldn't be tracked or jammed. She paired up with George Antheil, and they succeeded by synchronizing a miniaturized piano mechanism with radio signals, because George was a composer. They drafted designs for the frequency hopping system, which they patented. And on August 1942, they patented on August the 11th, 1942, so the patent was granted then. However, at the time, US Navy were unreceptive to considering inventions from outside the military, so it wasn't taken any further. Hedy was married and divorced 6 times and had 3 children. So her first marriage we've talked about, to Frederick Mendel. They were married from 1933 to 37. Her second husband was called Jean Markey. They were married from 1939 to 41. He was a screenwriter and producer, and while they were together, she adopted a boy called James Lamarr Markey in 1939, and they lived together in Beverly Hills. Husband number 3 was called John Loder, and they were married from 1943 to 47. He was an actor. Their children, Janice Loder, she was born in January 1945, and Anthony Loder was born in February 1947. In 2001, it actually came out that James was not adopted. He was, in fact, the illegitimate biological son of Hedy and John Loder. But this is after Hedy passed away. Fourth husband was Ernest Ted Stauffer, and they were married very briefly from 1951 to 52. He was a nightclub owner and restaurateur. Husband number 5 was W. Howard Lee. They were married from 1953 to 60, so that lasted a little bit longer. He was a Texas oilman. And husband number 6 was Louis J. Boys, and they were married from 1963 to 65. And he was actually her divorce lawyer. Following her 6th and final divorce in 1965, Hedy remained unmarried for the last 35 years of her life. I should think she'd had her fill of men after 7 unsuccessful marriages. Hedy had become a naturalised US citizen aged 38 on the 10th of April 1953. Her autobiography, Ecstasy and Me, was published in 1966, but she claims much of this was fictional and written by a ghostwriter called Leo Guild. Also in 1966, Hedy was arrested in LA for shoplifting, but the charges were dropped. During the 1970s, she lived in increasing isolation. She was offered several scripts, TV commercials and plays, but none of them kind of piqued her interest. In 1974, she filed a £10 million lawsuit against Warner Brothers for using her name as a parody in the Mel Brooks comedy Blazing Saddles. The villain is called Hedy Lamarr. She said that it infringed her right to privacy. Brooks just completely laughed it off and settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. With her eyesight failing, Hedy retreated from public life and settled in Miami Beach, Florida in 1981. In 1991, she was arrested for shoplifting again in Florida for stealing $21 worth of laxatives and eye drops. She was arrested for shoplifting. She pleaded no contest, and the charges were dropped in return for her promising not to break any laws for 1 year. In the last decade of her life, Hedy communicated only by telephone, even with her children and her really close friends. She would often talk for 6 to 7 hours a day on the phone, but barely saw anybody in person. Hedy died on the 19th of January 2000 of heart disease in Castleberry, Florida, aged 85. She was cremated, and son Anthony spread her ashes in Austria's Vienna woods. So now it's time for some fun facts about Hedy Lamarr. Hedy became estranged from her adopted son James when he was only 12 years old. Their relationship ended very quickly, very abruptly. Sorry, I'm gonna have a drink. Very, very abruptly. And he just went and moved in with another family. They didn't speak again for almost 50 years. I couldn't find any information about whether they reconciled before her death, but I really hope so. Maybe not though, because Hedy left James out of her will, and he sued for control of her $3.3 million estate, eventually settling for $50,000. I presume this is after it came out that he was actually her biological son. For her contribution to the film industry, Hedy was recognised in 2013 with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, so you can go and have your picture taken with her if you wish. Hedy was given an honorary grave in Vienna's Central Cemetery, where the remaining portion of her ashes were buried in November 2014, shortly before what would have been her 100th birthday. Now, awards. In 1939, Hedy was selected Most Promising New Actress in a poll of area voters conducted by the Philadelphia Record. In 1951, British moviegoers voted her the 10th Best Actress of 1950 for her performance in Samson and Delilah. In 1997, Hedy and George Antheil, I don't know how to say his name, I think it's Antheil, were jointly honoured with the Electronic Frontier Foundation's Pioneer Award, and Hedy was the first woman to receive the Invention Convention's Bowlby Nass Spirit of Achievement Award, known as the Oscars of Inventing. In 2014, Hedy was posthumously inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame for her frequency hopping spread spectrum technology, say that 10 times when you're drunk, which is the technology that birthed Bluetooth, Wi-Fi and GPS, which is why she is often known as the mother of Wi-Fi. So plays and stuff about her. 2008, there was an off-Broadway play called Frequency Hopping, which featured the life of Hedy and Antheil. It was written and staged by a lead singer, and the script was won a prize for Best New Play about Science and Technology from Stage. In 2011, her invention was explored in an episode of the Science Channel show Dark Matters Twisted But True. Her work on improving wireless security was also part of the premiere episode of the Discovery Channel show How We Invented the World. During 2010, the New York Public Library put on an exhibit called 30 Years of Photography at the New York Public Library. This included a topless photo of Hedy from circa 1930 by Austrian photographer Trude Fleischmann, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. Obviously she wasn't alive, so she couldn't consent to this, nor could she know that it had happened, but I don't know, I feel some type of way about that. In 2011, Anne Hathaway revealed that when she learned that the original Catwoman was based on Hedy Lamarr, she studied all of her films and incorporated some of her breathing techniques into her portrayal of Catwoman in the 2012 film The Dark Knight Rises. In 2016, there was an off-Broadway one-actor show called Stand Still and Look Stupid, the life story of Hedy Lamarr, starring Emily Ebbets. Also in 2016, Hedy was depicted in an off-woman play called Hedy, capital letters, The Life and Invention of Hedy and Inventions of Hedy Lamarr, a one-woman show written and performed by Heather Massey. Sorry, I do not know what's going on with my voice today. It's all over the place. I'm stumbling over my words. I sound like an idiot. 2017's Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story, was a documentary produced by Susan Sarandon, which detailed Hedy's career as an actress and inventor. Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, will portray Hedy in the limited Showtime series on her, which I can't wait for. Obviously, we'll do a Historian Reacts when that comes out. Asteroid 32730 Lamarr, discovered by Carl Reinmuth at Heidelberg Observatory in 1951, was named in her honour. It's cool people having asteroids named. I wonder if I got to have an asteroid named after me. I want an asteroid. Hedy's love of invention can actually be credited to her father, not her knobhead of her first husband. He inspired her to view the world with completely open eyes. He would often take her for long walks where they would discuss the inner workings of the things they saw along the way, like cars and printing presses. And at the age of 5, she was found taking apart her music box and reassembling it to understand how it operated. Of her first husband, she said, I'm going to read this verbatim, "I knew very soon that I could never be an actress while I was his wife. He was the absolute monarch in our marriage. I was like a doll. I was like a thing, some object of art which had to be guarded and imprisoned, having no mind or no life of its own." Which is really sad. No wonder she hated having to smile and play host to Mandel's friends and business partners, some of whom were associated with the Nazi Party. But she did take the knowledge gained from those dinner table conversations over wartime weaponry with her when she fled. Other inventions of Hedy's were an upgraded stoplight system and a tablet that dissolved in water to make a soda similar to Coca-Cola. Howard Hughes called her a genius upon seeing her new wing design for his planes. But unfortunately, Hedy's patent for the frequency hopping technology expired before she ever saw a penny for it. It wasn't until much later in her life that she gained any recognition for that whatsoever. But I'm glad she did live to see the impact of her hard work. If you would like to find out more about Hedy Lamarr, go and watch Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story, the documentary by Susan Sarandon. Read Ecstasy and Me, the autobiography. Even though it's supposed to be highly fictional and written by a ghostwriter, it is a very good read. And finally, The Only Woman in the Room by Marie Benedict is also a very good read. So there we go. Hedy Lamarr, what do you guys think? Beauty, brains, she had it all. The mother of, where would we be right now in 2020 without GPS, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth? They just seem such staples of our lives now, don't they? But yeah, we have Hedy and George to thank for having those in our lives. So thank you, Hedy, the mother of Wi-Fi and GPS and Bluetooth. Yeah, that is it. Hedy Lamarr, a truly inspiring woman, I think you'll agree. And I will see you next week for another episode of Herstory. Please do give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Please do subscribe, hit the notification bell. Once I get to 1,000 subscribers, it'll open a community tab for me, and I can then run a poll on YouTube every week as to who you would like to see me do an episode on. So please help me get to 1,000 subscribers so you can have a say in who we cover on Herstory. Comment down below who you would like to see me do an episode on. Please visit my Facebook page, the Herstory Girls, and also I've just finished setting up the Herstory Girls Instagram account, so please head over and have a look at us there as well. And that is everything. Thank you very much for your continued love and support. You guys are amazing, and I will see you soon with another Herstory.